Hello, everyone. I'm glad to see the microphones are on. Alexei, thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, I'm honored. It's great to be here. A lot of familiar faces in the audience.
So you and I actually met playing competitions.
That's right.
We played Capture the Flag, which actually, if you go just a little bit that way, you'll find DEF CON CTF going strong. And so competitions have played a pretty big role in, I think, both of our starts in this industry. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
Give the audience a background.
Sure. So, as Perri alluded to, we both got our start actually at RPI, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, with some folks in the audience like Marcus, playing on RPIxCC, which was our computer security CTF team. So basically a competitive hacking team paying in competitive hacking challenges, all legal, all above board, but events like the DEF CON CTF here. And it's a fantastic way to learn these sort of dark arts of cybersecurity. Offensive security, particularly in our world, software reverse engineering and zero-day development and vulnerability discovery. And with these competitions, you kind of gamify hacking. It's hard to teach this stuff in the classroom. You need deep time investment to really figure your way around hacking. And the gamification aspect keeps people going for what is something that really takes a long time to learn. A lot of hours spent in debuggers, spent in IDA Pro, spent in Ghidra, and the gamified aspect of this keeps people coming back. And it's amazing to see this kind of construct, the gamification of CTFs, being adopted now, by formal, multi-million-dollar government efforts that are on the bleeding edge of cybersecurity.
I know that one thing we ran into when we would play CTF would be that in Capture the Flag, you have these synthetic vulnerabilities. But once in a while, you would find a real-world vulnerability, something that was actually an O-Day. I used to run CTFs, and one of the challenges we ran into is preventing teams from coming to the competition with O-Days and using them to sweep the board. And so something we saw in AIxCC was that there were synthetic vulnerabilities that were found, but there were also 18 O-Days found in finals. And I think that's just a really awesome thing that the US government has been able to do here. Do you think competitions are something that can really drive innovation forward in this space?
100%. I mean, they absolutely are. The proof is in the pudding. We just did it. A cybersecurity competition. This AIxCC just wrapped up. Some incredible results. 18 real-world vulnerabilities found during the competition. But also, this is building on prior efforts like the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge. I think one of the things that's really remarkable here with AI is that the sort of marginal table scraps we're getting from the AI revolution. These LLMs, which are not designed for cybersecurity purposes, just applying them to cybersecurity, we're getting these incredible results. You look at the probably hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars invested before in more formal approaches to actually identifying vulnerabilities, which were not as fruitful as this line of research, where we're taking a technology that is more malleable, more applicable to a wide range of things, whether it's writing poetry or hacking, and it's really some really amazing things with hacking. I do also want to give a shout out. You mentioned our challenges while playing CTFs, finding real-world vulnerabilities. And it's pretty legendary in the RPIxCC lore, the story of the rafflecopters falling out of, the lava skaters falling out of rafflecopters.
Yeah, so there was a team that was playing from our college called Lawler Skaters dropping from rafflecopters, which should date it for those in the audience.
And the team found, I think it was a BSD kernel full remote 0-day during DEF CON CTF.
At the time, DEF CON CTF was running FreeBSD as the infrastructure, and famously, the Lawler skaters used their FreeBSD O-Day to hack the scoreboard.
And I think they somehow still didn't win. They came in second place.
No, I believe they were actually disqualified.
Oh, yes.
So actually, that brings us perfectly into the next aspect of the competition, and I think your career that's been formative in both spaces, which is the community at DEF CON, the kinds of people that come here. You are going to Recon and DEF CON and conferences like that from the time that you were in school. And I think that's actually a really unique aspect for someone in the position in which you're currently today. How has that shaped your career, and how does that shape the way you see policy now?
Absolutely. Well, I think hacking and cybersecurity as an industry are sort of unique that they come out of this 1980s youth subculture, this almost punk counterculture. I look at this year, so we're celebrating 40 years of Frack magazine, and Frack, coming out as this computer underground, dark arts sort of underground thing, to now being a place where top teams that have played in, say, the DARPA Cyber Grand Challenge were publishing their results. I'm thinking famously of Shellfish, publishing on how mechanical fish worked in Frack. We have folks in the audience, Dr. Sergey Brodis over here, who have really realized the value that the hacker community has brought to cybersecurity. The offensive perspective, the perspective that releasing an exploit or showing a vulnerability. An exploit is a proof of vulnerability in software that works through sort of construction. I think the hacker community, conferences like DEF CON, are an amazing place for exchange of ideas, people thinking and sharing different perspectives. And you see that reflected here by the fact that top people at the U.S. government are coming here. I mean, this is where DARPA is choosing to do the kind of finals, the big event here at DEF CON. This is something that started 33 years ago. I was talking to Jeff Moss, the founder, last night. It's amazing that this has gone from this underground rebel thing where people had free Kevin stickers to a place where we have top government officials. We've had cabinet secretaries speak here, directors of the NSA, DARPA here with a big stage. And it's just a testament to the value this community has provided to moving cybersecurity forward.
I think that's one of the things that makes me most excited about the challenge, the way that the community can get involved and get folks excited about the tools we see coming out. Something that I want to highlight that I am so excited about is that all of the tools coming out of the competition are going to be open source, and actually some of them are already open source. And so the flip of that question is, you're familiar with the open source community. You've been that developer pulling tools, AFL, et cetera, modifying it for the specific targets you're looking at. How do you think the community can leverage these tools, grow these tools, and ultimately make them extremely valuable for national security?
Absolutely. So it's amazing to see these tools being released open source. And I'll note the administration recently released the AI action plan coming out of our Office of Science and Technology Policy. And,
OSTP.
OSTP. One of the key points in the AI action plan was support for open source models, open source weights. And this is something broader than just cybersecurity, but in general, the administration is very excited about open source AI and loosening regulations, opening up a space for innovation. Open source is just one sort of small part of that. Now, in the security world, it's interesting that there's traditionally been sort of a culture of open source security tools. You look at tools like AFL, available for free, open source, one of the most impactful fuzzers around. I mean, the story of the Cyber Grand Challenge a couple of years ago, I guess a decade ago at this point, the real story there was fuzzing works. All of the teams there used AFL in some way, shape, or form, and open source tool, not some proprietary thing. Look at NSA's release of Ghidra, this amazing software reverse engineering suite, developed in secret for over 2 decades and then released open source.
Yeah, and Ghidra is a tool that allows you to take compiled software and turn it back into essentially source code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And something that went from a top secret spy tool to a tool that's available online for free, for students, for anyone, use professionally, modify, tinker on, and then contribute those contributions back upstream. So this is something that is tremendously valuable, and as we move into this sort of AI age, or the use of AI as a more normalized kind of software tool, open source is going to be so important there, just like it's been important for things like Linux going back decades.
I think something that's really valuable about having folks who have spent time in government that have also been part of this community is that they understand the value of open source tooling and how open source tooling can really drive security forward. what are the ways in which you think the tools coming out of AICC could impact U.S. national security?
Sure. So I think a lot has been made of the sort of threat, but also the opportunity of AI for security. And I am very strongly a believer that AI will be more advantageous for defenders than offense. I guess in two ways. I think the types of things that AI is good at doing, identifying vulnerabilities in a low-cost, easy way, will really democratize access to vulnerability information. So I look at top companies, the top big tech firms, all the firms we know, the household names. They make the devices that are in our pockets, and they have amazing security talent, often sourced and recruiting from alumni of the U.S. government, from the military, from the intelligence community, right? Those people are very well paid. They're very elite. They've got very unique technical tradecraft they're bringing to bear. And then you look at that vulnerable, 95% of technology. Look at critical infrastructure technology. Look at smart refrigerators, smart TVs, things like that. It's almost a joke. You come here to DEF CON, they have the router hacking village, and you can take a router you bought at Staples, hack on it, and people will find vulnerabilities within a matter of minutes or hours, just here at DEF CON. Compare that to finding a novel iPhone jailbreak, which could be a multi-month effort, and that's something that could procure, could garner millions of dollars in cost, right? So I think AI will democratize access to that information. If we can take AI and apply it to, here's the source code for this router, identify all the vulnerabilities, and then generate patches for me. And you don't need an elite team of government-trained hackers to do that. So I think that's going to be really amazing. I also think AI will, of course, help offense, and it will help with people writing exploits a little faster or developing malware a little faster. But I think overall it might be sort of a Red Queen game. You look at in Alice in Wonderland, the Red Queen curses Alice and makes Alice run faster but stay in the same place. And Alice is just running and running just to stay in the same place. I think we'll have a bit of that effect. A good guy with an AI versus a bad guy with an AI are both going to be, the attacker will be faster than an attacker without AI, but I think a defender with AI will be relatively advantaged versus an attacker with AI. And everyone will have to adapt this technology into their defense and offense stacks, but I think net will have a net defensive advantage.
And I think one of the aspects of AI, the AI Cyber Challenge as it was designed, was to fit very easily within a CI/CD pipeline, so within the software developer's experience. That way it could rapidly give feedback as the software developer was creating their software. But there's also an aspect of the open sourcing of all these tools that makes that possible. Because as you talked about, you often see folks, whether on the offensive or defensive side, having to modify these tools for their specific use case. And as we've seen software get more and more complicated, we've seen these kinds of program analysis tools have to become either more and more specialized or have a human actually play a role in tailoring it for those specific targets. I know that you have a background in program analysis. This is something that you spent a fair amount of time working on earlier in your career. I'd love your thoughts on where you see this space evolving as targets, pieces of software get more complex and get harder to apply these kinds of tools to.
So I think a few things. One, when I look at sort of corporate software development, security, secure development life cycles, you look at folks like Dino Daizovi, who went from offense more into sort of corporate security and security engineering programs, and he was championing these ideas of sort of DevSecOps or having staff-level engineers who aren't security experts, deploying into development teams and being embedded with a development team and ensuring that the software they're building is secured as it's being built, rather than sort of a retroactive, after the fact, right before the release pen test. And I think AI will have incredible abilities to do that, to augment normal developers who are not security aware, let them ask questions with every commit. Is this commit introducing new vulnerabilities? Does this, I patched a bug, but I didn't introduce a new one along the way. And that's the kind of questions that, again, you take these very high-end, say, offensive security talent folks that not all companies have access to, that even companies that do have access to them, these are finite resources. So I think AI will be an incredible tool to enable people to more rapidly ask those questions about their software.
That's also a value that DEF CON, I think, and this community plays is bringing more folks into this space. I know as we were designing the AI Cyber Challenge, a huge aspect of that was education and enthusiasm. How do we get folks that aren't familiar with program analysis to be enthusiastic about this space? How do we communicate to them the value of finding vulnerabilities in software, fixing it, innovating on tools, et cetera? Competition was a huge aspect of it. What role do you think policy can play in this space of encouraging adoption, encouraging folks to become more educated in this domain? What is the role that maybe CISA might play in this space as well?
Well, I think a few things. Democratizing access to these tools will go very far to getting more people using them. So you mentioned program analysis, of course, a great area of interest. Many program analysis tools that people commonly use are open source, are widely available. But you're looking at things like LLVM, not the most accessible piece of software.
And actually, when we say program analysis, what we mean is these automatic tools that do things like understanding software behavior, perhaps for a reverse engineering perspective, to find vulnerabilities, et cetera.
Exactly. And many of the tools that have historically been used in this space are sort of obscure, highly technical, at the intersection of cybersecurity and compiler theory and operating systems. And you need PhD level expertise in multiple areas to make effective use of them. And tools like AI, where maybe some more of that back-end reasoning is being pushed off into the language model, and you don't have to compile your own LLVM and do some lift into an IR and then have a suite that's walking over the flow graph. I think AI will really democratize access to these tools and also make people realize that there are going to be types of vulnerabilities that AI will not easily find. And again, this kind of red queen race, if you price in that defenders are going to find all those same vulnerabilities offenders will, or attackers will, and then the competition is who can exploit them faster, you have to imagine that top-tier actors, top-tier, particularly offensive actors, will be finding those vulnerabilities which the AI can't find. I look at the same dynamic with the fuzzing, whole fuzzing space, right? There was this concern, is fuzzing going to find bugs? Will it not? Fuzzing keeps bearing fruit, but there are certainly bugs that are not fuzzable. And if you have a bug that is not fuzzable, that can't be found with a fuzzer, that's the kind of bug that's likely to live longer in the wild, be used for a longer time. It might be more valuable if you're doing, say, an offensive cyber operation.
You worked on fuzzing for a while. How often did you run into that unfuzzable vulnerability that really caused you a lot of pain?
Well, you see a lot of logic bugs that are hard to fuzz. And I'd also
Can
say...
you define like a logic bug for the audience?
So logic bugs being issues in the logic of the program rather than relying on memory corruption. So a state-based thing, rather than trying to smash some bits and corrupt something, finding, in the finite state machine of the program an issue that, I can get logged in as admin if I do this one weird thing and send a post request instead of a get request at this time. So logic bugs are hard to fuzz for. But also there's plenty of places where it's hard to even get a fuzzer in. You look at things like AFL, it fuzzes programs with a command line interface. You take this file that AFL generates and you give it to the program. I did a lot of work previously in finding vulnerabilities in web browser sandboxes. I worked actually at Apple on this. So inside the web browser, at that interface between the very low privileged individual web content tabs and then the higher privileged operating system, there was a set of vulnerabilities you could find there that could be used for privilege escalation. That's not an easy and obvious place to be able to put a fuzzer, and actually built some custom fuzzing tooling that let us fuzz, from JavaScript, actually fuzz this kind of interior-facing user to kernel type interface. That took weeks of manual work figuring out how to prototype this, where to insert these kind of shims for fuzzing, and then all this work to maintain that fuzzer and keep it up to date. You can imagine if I asked the AI, hey AI, I want you to tap in and figure out how we do JavaScript object serialization, deserialization, and I want you to plug that serialized code and send it out via this interface. That could save me weeks of work just building that harness out and then applying fuzzing.
Right. I mean, I think bringing up logic bugs is really important here. So something you'll see when you look at the AIxCC results is that there's different kinds of vulnerabilities that the AI tools are finding. And some of those, right, we're looking at memory corruption vulnerability. So these are things that mess up the memory in the program and cause an effect that can be discovered through different kinds of instrumentation, et cetera. But these logic bugs, especially as AI tooling has become, especially as program analysis tooling, just normal traditional program analysis tooling has become more effective, you've seen hackers gravitate towards more logic bugs. I think one of the hopes from AIxCC is that this will help to really annihilate memory corruption as a class of vulnerability that can be commonly leveraged, and then to start tackling some of the logic bugs, especially the way that AI can synthesize a large amount of a code base and offer perspective to the human on what the assumptions of the developer were and areas where those assumptions may not be quite met.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think aside from doing things like scanning, say, some C source code or a binary for vulnerabilities, there's opportunities for LLMs to do other tasks like translating C into Rust. Now, I'm also a big skeptic of sort of automated machine-based translations because when you translate from one abstraction to another, you of course introduce vulnerabilities at that interface of abstractions. What are the things you shouldn't do in Rust specific to the semantics of Rust, and how do you educate the AI that, one, you're going to take this C and move it to Rust, but also don't introduce new vulnerabilities along the way. But that probably gets us far and eliminates a lot of those low-hanging fruit vulnerabilities, albeit perhaps giving people a false sense of security.
I'm actually so glad that you brought that up. I think as we're seeing AI coding, vibe coding, I believe is the term of art. As we're seeing vibe coding become more and more popular, and as there are tools specifically dedicated to that style of programming, I think capabilities like what we're seeing from AIxCC will be extremely helpful in guiding AI-generated code to be more secure and to be more stable. So when we talk about AI generating Rust or potentially generating components that were formerly built in C, what I'm really excited about, especially with the open sourcing of these tools, is the way in which that can be applied to the generation of that code. The way those program analysis tools, the vulnerability discovery tools, can be applied to not just find vulnerabilities if they're generated, but to actually start to help shape the logic I wrapped around that LLM doing the generation.
Absolutely. I think, in the past couple of years, tracking the growth of AI-driven coding, there was all this concern, people saying, these stupid people are going to use the AI, they're not going to read the code, they're going to use all these new vulnerabilities because they're doing the equivalent of copy-pasting from Stack Overflow. And yet, as you build out these professionalized coding suites, you imagine an opportunity to say, generate me this function, and then on the back end, the prompt for that AI can say, generate the function in a secure way, don't make mistakes, don't write buffer overflows, don't write use after freeze, and maybe you actually will have inherently more secure code being produced. And maybe there's this valley of death that the past couple of years we had vibe coding without vibe security.
And in some ways, that's the value of these more scalable, more fast vulnerability discovery tools keep pace with the speed at which code is going to be generated. Right? This allows you to do commit checking and security reviews faster as code is going to be added more quickly.
Absolutely, and again, at the same time, you'll introduce these blind spots. Look at the SolarWinds incident we dealt with in 2020 and 2021, where the compiler itself was compromised. And you can imagine a world where we think that the source code generation is perfectly secure, but is the Git repo it's being stored in secure? Is the compiler secure? So there's always going to be opportunities, asymmetric areas of vulnerability.
So I guess I want to end by getting your perspective on where you think, in your position now, policy can play a role in the adoption of these tools, some of the challenges that we discussed today that these tools are designed to address.
Sure. So I think, again, I would point you to the AI action plan that the Office of Science and Technology Policy released, talking about the advantage of promoting things like open source model weights, open source AI models, the interest in sort of broadly deregulating and opening up a space for AI innovation. I think previously in government over the past 4 years, there had been a lot of fear of AI, whether it was in cybersecurity and other doomsday scenarios. And I think this administration is really embracing AI as an opportunity. Obviously, there are challenges that come with it, and I think many of these challenges that I've highlighted here, for example, with cybersecurity, there's actually, I think, again, a defensive advantage for the use of AI. So really, it's opening up a space for innovation from researchers, folks like people competing in this challenge. The government provided this sort of small amount of money. It's like the little grain of sand in the oyster that makes the pearl. This small amount of money, this irritation, this provocation, this idea, go try something, go color outside the lines, try something that's not been done. And that results in this whole event and 18 real-world vulnerabilities and crazy low cost. They got $150 per vulnerability.
Yeah, $150 per vulnerability, I think.
Great taxpayer value.
Yeah,
Millions spent around that, but in the end, competition, amazing tools.
But that's where the open source comes in.
Exactly.
You can scale that for free.
Exactly.
And actually, that's a fantastic place to end it. Is for free. You can find the AI Cyber Challenge tools, and for the low cost of about $150 a vulnerability, or even less with some of the tools, you can actually start to make software more secure.
And it's also all to say, as I understand, most of these models were built on already sort of proprietary AI models, where it's you're paying a fee to run them. It'd be interesting to explore hooking these up with open source models. There was just a release last week from OpenAI.
Well, that's one of the values of community engagement is just increasing efficiency, making these tools even better. But simply the fact that you can do this and you don't need a human expert, a scarce resource to find these bugs, I think that's a huge improvement.
Huge win.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Alex.